Hi, I'm Phil Savage for PC Gamer, and I'm joined by
Andy Kelly, features producer.
And Fraser Brown, online editor.
And we're going to talk about Hitman levels. So we recently, along with a few other from the PC Gamer team, decided to rank all of the levels in the recent Hitman trilogy. 21 in all, including the tutorial. We voted on them, ordered them around, and now we have a definitive list that nobody is quite happy with, because that's how democracy works. I guess, Andy, to start, how did you find ranking that many levels?
Kind of exhausting and difficult, because there's so many of them, and some of them, upon ranking them, I realised that I liked the idea of them more than actually playing them, and I couldn't actually remember that much about them, so some of my rankings were probably a little bit off. In my head, I had an idea of what the level was, and when I sat down to think about why I liked it, I went, wait a minute, I don't really know. Why do I like it?
There's a lot of levels that are good, but you're like, how good is that based on relative terms to other Hitman levels? Fraser, what makes a good Hitman level, do you reckon?
Exotic locations, especially these days where I'm stuck in a manky flat in Paisley. So yeah, something, maybe some nice weather, some beaches. I like Haven because of that. It's like going on a wee holiday. Opportunities and good mission stories. Like I want shenanigans, slapstick murders. But at the same time, I don't want to be kind of railroaded into these. I want to be able to go and explore and create my own shenanigans without IO telling me these are the best ways to kill your target.
That makes sense, yeah. So before we get to the top 5, let's check in with the worst levels at the bottom of the list.
No surprises for last place.
Well, potentially. Colorado is in last place. That's the Hitman 1 level set on just a farm. So, yeah, Andy, what was it about this that just doesn't resonate?
Yeah, I think it's the lack of a social space. Like, for me, the best Hitman levels are sort of swivel around a big public place where you can kind of leisurely explore and scout the place out, whereas this is just like the enemies are on high alert. You can still, get a disguise and blend in, but you're still having to, keep instinct mode on constantly to make sure there's no white dot over people's heads. Whereas, and my favorite levels are there's just big spaces to just be free and carefully plan out what you're going to do.
For me, I think it's also that 4 targets is just so much to deal with. It's 4 targets, plus there's a mission objective that kind of plays out the same every time. But each of the targets is, locked down in that way that a Hitman target is, where they've always got bodyguards following them, or they're always in their own bit of this sprawling farm with their own types of guards. So it's just a lot of effort to go through. For a while, I just assumed, okay, well, 4 is just the wrong number. Like, you can't do a Hitman level with 4 or more targets. But we will find out in a second in the top 5 that I was wrong. We've also rated Carpathian Mountains pretty low. That's Hitman 3's last level, which is, it's really just an epilogue. It's not even a level at all. I think ICA Facility, that's the tutorial area. I think this is a little unfair because it's very funny just having a lot of plywood sets. But I don't know, Fraser, I guess the fact that it's so small and it is a tutorial kind of counts against it.
Yeah, and I think there's you don't get rated on it. There's no competitive element. For me, that's part of it, is knowing that my friends are worse or better than me at a level, and there's just not that in the tutorial. And because it is just a tutorial, when I did that, I loved it, but then I haven't wanted to go back and do it again in Hitman 3 or Hitman 2, and kind of that makes it lower down for me. It's definitely above Colorado and the Carpathian Mountains. The Carpathian Mountains I don't think needs to go at the bottom below Colorado, because it's on a train and trains are cool. Way cooler than a farm that has nothing else. I know we've already gone past Colorado, but I want to emphasize just how fucking boring that farm is. There's not a secret lab. They're not making robots in this farm. It's just a farm with a bunch of militants. It's just dreadfully dull.
Yep. Agree with that. All right, let us jump forward to the top 5 of the list. The best Hitman levels, as voted by 5 people who don't entirely agree on the best Hitman levels. So number 5, it's Paris.
Just like, what a way to start Hitman's comeback, right? Paris is just an exceptional level. It's when you're tuxedoed up, wandering into this beautiful palace. It is just gobsmacking. And like, obviously it was beautiful then, and they've kind of, Hitman's only gotten prettier as the trilogy's gone on. And yeah, I keep going back to that level and I'm just not bored of it. It's one of those perfect levels where it's just one self-contained building. Yeah, they're the grounds, but it's mostly just this one palace. But it's flipping massive. And you get to dress up as a catwalk model and strut your stuff. And I think Agent 47 probably really enjoyed that. I like him to have a bit of a break.
It's also got that nice sort of balancing act where, yes, there's a lot of disguises and a lot of fun things you can do pretending to be other people, but if you find one of the invitations that's on the bottom floor up to the auction or whatever it is at the top, you can just sort of stroll in your normal clothes and walk right up to one of the targets, basically. It's cool little opportunities in there. Anything to add, Andy?
It's nice when you walk through the door and the first thing you see is a spotlight appearing on your target who's sort of regaling the guests amassed in the main hall. Like, that's a really nice sort of way of drawing attention to your target, but he's in a place that is totally inaccessible. Like, if you tried to get him there, you'd get busted. So I like that. And just some of the scene setting, like the backstage area for the catwalk is such an incredible thing. There's like stylists scurrying around drying people's hair and fitting dresses, and like it just has a real like lively feeling of, like, I think some levels feel quite empty, like Santa Fortuna and Chongqing feel kind of a bit dead, whereas this feels like a really legitimately convincingly busy place, and that just the busier a level feels, I think, the more I like it.
Hell yeah. At number 4, it is a Hitman 3 level, Berlin. Andy, I know for a fact that you love this level.
Yeah, I think I spent like the first 600, 700 words of my review going on about it. It really stuck out to me as the highlight. I think it's like a Hitman veteran's choice. Like, I think if you were telling someone to play the series for the first time, this would be a terrible level. But if you've played, shitloads of Hitman, it feels like a great like test of all the skills you've amassed to this point. And I like the free-form nature of it. I especially like when you play it a second time and you choose an alternate starting location. All the 10 or 11 IC Hitmen are marked on the HUD already, so you don't have to go through the ID process. And it just feels like a kind of pick and mix, a death pick and mix, where you can just go, oh, who am I gonna kill next and how? Like, I really like that. It really feels like Hitman at its sandboxy best.
Yeah, to explain the conceit of the level a bit, like there are, did you say 10 or 11 targets?
Isn't it like more like, I think it's 5.
No, there's 10 in total.
Well, you only need to kill 5.
Yeah, oh, right, but yeah, there are more like hidden around.
Because when you kill 5 of them, they flee.
You scare them off. Yeah.
And you can plant mines at the part where they flee if you want to kill the rest of them. But you're not going to get a good rating.
Just for fun?
Yeah, just for fun.
But yeah, where I think Colorado was, if you do 4 proper targets, that's too much. Berlin really does show kind of how far IO's come in the design over the course of this trilogy. Like, it works so well having you kill 5 out of a much larger pool, and having them all be people who are trying to be incognito and who are trying to sort of blend into the scenery. So they're not flanked by bodyguards, and they're just sort of trying to keep quiet, watching for you as well. And that's a really interesting. It means that you can get away with things that you just can't in any of the other Hitman levels, because you'll just be seen by a bodyguard, you'll be seen by all the people who are looking out for these targets, whereas here you can just stumble upon lots of people who are kind of alone, keeping to themselves, who are patrolling in unusual places.
There's one of them who's like the leader, and he does have a bodyguard, which kind of is a nice little way of mixing it up. And I think the first time I did the level, I managed to kill him, without his bodyguard noticing. But it's cool that they made one of them like extra hard to kill.
There's some cool narrative stuff as well, like, and it feels a bit like if Absolution had been good, because it like, and there are quite a few moments, I think, in Hitman 3 in particular, where you see like IO is invested in this story, and they want to push it out there, but in this time they've managed to find a perfect balance for it. But with Berlin, the fact that you start not near the club, but by that petrol station with that like red sign just glowing in the distance, and kind of walking through the forest, getting your first earpiece. Like, I'm glad that you don't have to keep doing that, but as the introduction to a level, it's a fantastic way to begin. And you are kind of lost. You're like, how do I get in here? What am I dealing with? Who are my targets? You don't really have any help. You don't have like Diana in your ear helping you. And you sort of feel like Agent 47 must feel, like unsure of himself. And then you start killing and you're like, oh, it's the same as always.
The dance floor, I think, is worth a mention. Like, that's like the peak of IO's like crowd tech, the way the lights sweep across this dark room, revealing all these little bobbing heads. Like, that's just an incredible piece of scene setting and atmosphere.
There was like a moment where you just go in there and I was like, holy shit, I'm in a club again. I hate clubs, but I really want to be in a club. It was just really authentic. And being able to actually, like, be the DJ is such a... I mean, you knew that was going to be an option, right? They weren't going to do a club and not let you be the DJ. But it's so good.
All right, number 3, back to Hitman 1. Its last episode is Hokkaido.
Probably one of the most, like, stunning locations, just looking out that window. But it's like, it's not got the kind of gratuitous grossness of something like Dubai, which is all gilded and gold. It's a bit classier. But I think, and this is what you've brought up a few times, the way that disguises interact with like the security, and how they let you into different areas. Like, it unfurls in this really like organic way. And it's a surprisingly big level. Like, it doesn't feel like it's gonna be big. The setup is like, this is gonna be very self-contained. But as you get more disguises, you realize this is a big place, and there are a hell of a lot of opportunities here.
I think the kind of lavishness of it, like, it's really IO again showing off with like its ability to make like hotels and places of luxury that you want to hang out in. Like, I'd love to go to the onsen in that hospital and hang out in that little Zen garden. Like, it's really an opulent level, and really taps into that whole Bond / World of Assassination exotic locale thing.
I love how fan servicey this one is to an extent. Like, if you've played the older Hitmans, Hokkaido really feels like it's sort of nodding back to Blood Money, maybe even before, with its design, with the mission opportunities within this one that are just direct lifts from other Hitman games as well, like with the pufferfish and stuff like that. Like, it's still quite experimental, the thing where whatever disguise you're wearing, that lets you go through specific doors because there are RFID chips in all of the clothes. So it's really challenging if you want to try and do that suit only, no disguises run. But in terms of the pure fantasy of just like getting a disguise, walking up to a door, the doors, the building acknowledges as your authority. It lets you walk through itself without even the human element there. Really interestingly designed space. Really cool. I think I like it more than Sapienza, which is most people's favourite level. Speaking of which, number 2 is Sapienza. A surprise there. We've made a Hitman ranking list, and Sapienza is not number 1.
I mean, it is.
I like
great,
that we're kind of just... Sorry, go ahead, Andy.
I was just reminiscing about my time playing and thinking that is a good level, isn't it? Like, it makes such an imprint on you, that coastline and the colours of the buildings and the beach and stuff. Like, I think it feels smaller when I play it now. It feels quite small. I mean, especially when you look at the area of Italy where they based it on. It's like a very condensed version of it, but it is just like, when I think of Hitman now, this new series, I do think of Sapienza.
I kind of just feel like, how did they make this thing? It's like every time I go back, it's just wonder. But especially that first time, and you're just like, it can't be this big. And it's like, no, it's much bigger, actually. You're wandering around the town, and you're like, oh, you've got this whole elaborate mansion to break into, and then it has a secret lab. And one of the, I think, better secret labs, because as much as I don't like how most of the secret labs in this series, it's quite small. It's just this, it's like a cavern, and there's like really just one bit you have to worry about, and it's not too tricky to get into. It's not as fun on repeated attempts, but Sapienza as a whole is, because it is just such a massive sandbox. And yeah, and I think it taps into that like exotic holiday. You're rubbing shoulders with wealthy people that you're going to assassinate. It's like a perfect Hitman.
I mean, Hitman 2 would do a lot of large levels. They've got like Santa Fortuna, they've got Mumbai. Even Hitman 1 had, I guess, Marrakesh. They're large spaces, although often they are kind of disparate bits that kind of fit together. There's a lot of contrast. They really like to build on contrast. So obviously Marrakesh has the market, but it also has the kind of clean Swedish consulate building. Whereas Sapienza, very strong thematically, but I really love the thing where both targets are just in the mansion. So the town almost feels like it's just a space to set up ways to draw the targets out if you want to. Like, you could play that level quite easily without ever visiting the entire town, which is probably 3/4 of the map space.
The town is really like where you prepare, right? It's where you find the opportunities, because there are so many different ways to get into the mansion, and you use the town to find them. And I like it because, again, it's one of those perfect social spaces because there's very little hostile stuff going on in the town. So you can just wander around, get your bearings, experiment, find different stories. Like, it's got a leisurely, like, holiday feel to it. And I think that's the best way to do these sprawling ones, where you actually, there isn't like a sort of pressure. You can just wander around, enjoy this freedom, and just kind of plan as you go. And then you get into the actual mansion, and that's where it starts getting tricky. That's where you've got to watch your back, and where you're going to always find people kind of staring at you, wondering if you really belong there.
Oh, I will say one negative point, replaying it, and same with Hokkaido, and I think all the Hitman 1 levels this is before they started doing like appropriate regional accents, so it's really distracting that everyone's American or Cockney
Yes.
in like on the Amalfi Coast and in Japan. Like, that's quite distracting in Sapienza. It sort of detracts from the sort of continental European vibe a bit when everyone sounds like a Californian voice actor or a Cockney Guy Ritchie extra. It's a bit odd, but I'll let it slide.
It's kind of almost fitting, though. I love that naffness of Hitman. Like, you never see Agent 47 putting on an accent. He would never do that. He doesn't even change the way he talks at all. He always sounds like Agent 47. And even his alias, Tobias Reaper, and I love that callback keeps coming back. He uses it multiple times in this trilogy. I mean, it's like, was Dave Hitman already on the guest list or something?
He makes a lot of jokes as well. Like, someone will go, "Oh, you look like you can get the job done," and he goes, "I've been known to, efficiently deal with problems," or whatever. like stop making
always deadpan.
It's a good job that people in Hitman's world can't pick up on incredibly on-the-nose, threatening-sounding puns.
It makes sense with the I kind of like that when you disguise yourself as like the help. Like, that makes sense because all these rich people don't even look in the eyes, the people around them.
I've not tried it, but I wonder if you could just disguise yourself as a family member in Dartmoor and people wouldn't realise. They're like, "Oh, my son."
You can't take their clothes. I tried it.
Damn.
Yeah.
Wasted opportunity. All right, number 1, our best voted Hitman level from the new trilogy is Miami.
Do any of us in this conversation agree with that being number 1?
No.
None of us voted for Miami as our top level. No.
I think it's a really great level, but no.
What did we all vote for number 1, actually? I voted Berlin.
I think mine was Sapienza, and then I think Berlin was like 2 for me. No, Dartmoor was 2, then Berlin was 3.
Mine was Hokkaido.
So none of us are happy here, but still, it's a great level, though.
Well, no, but I think all of us voted Miami pretty high.
When I spoke to IO the other week, they were talking about how they don't regret, but they think that they made some levels too big, and they name-checked Miami and Mumbai. But I don't feel like Miami doesn't feel. It's very sprawling and dense, but it doesn't feel like an unmanageable space. It's just there's a lot going on. I think is what makes it feel bigger than it is.
And you've really got 2 sections, don't you? Like, which is often the case with the Hitman level. You've got the big building where you're after the dude, and then you've got like the racetrack and the assorted stuff around there.
Yeah, it's large. I think it's a good showcase as the first level of Hitman 2, because it's probably larger than most Hitman 1 levels, but it's not, like, Mumbai really does feel big, and like Santa Fortuna, that feels like really big and quite sprawling. Whereas Miami, I think just because it's big, but it's cohesive because it's a place of business essentially, and you know what you're getting there. It's the racetrack, it's the associated like stands and the car parks and stuff like that. Like everything there feels like it makes sense to be there. And I really like the fact that it is a live event built around the race as a specific moment. I think that's something that makes it stand apart from most Hitman levels, unless there's one I'm not thinking of, but that's such a good centerpiece, like opportunity for a kill to build up to. It feels really satisfying.
You have to race the race a little bit. Like, if you leave it too long, you lose a bunch of opportunity. You can always kill both of them. But there's some stuff that you'll want to try that's really fun, like good opportunities, that if you get stuck or a little bit lost or just take your time too much, you'll run out of time for those. But then I love that, because then you adapt and you're like, okay, this plan's fucked, I have to find a new one. That's very Hitman as well. It's like working on the fly. But if you're quick, you get some of the best stuff, and you can just I really love just working as the pit crew. It's like a very sneaky way to kill the racer. But then you might leave it till she's on the kind of podium. Blowing her up there is also very satisfying.
The garage is quite fun to infiltrate because there's like one guy in there in quite an awkward position who obviously knows everyone on the team, so you've got to like work around him and use some coin action, which is another ridiculous Hitman thing, that the people are so enamored by the tinkling sound of a coin in the distance, but that's just part of the Hitman flavor, isn't it? The goofiness.
That would absolutely work with me. Ooh, money.
All right, so that's our top 5. People can see the full list over at pcgamer.com, where they'll also find Andy's Hitman 3 review. If you want to try these levels out for yourself, Hitman 3 is out now, and you can import the levels from Hitman 1 and Hitman 2 via a complicated process, but it is worth persisting with because you just get 21 amazing assassination levels at your fingertips. Thanks for watching.